it may be the case that I should look for somebody that already owns a soundstage, and I should buy their company, because the SBA will help me do that.
That's correct.
Right. So can you,
because they're looking for an existing income producing entity. That's what they're looking to fund. They're not looking to fund a startup.
Right.
But you can cheat the process a little bit. Let's say you wanted to do 10 episodes, an entire season of a show, and that would equal $4 million. That would be a perfect use for the SBA Capline program, where you could also buy an existing business for $4 million, and now you own the real estate and the business. So there are two different ways to use the SBA.
And then I think, so the other thing that I learned when I was working with you is, and this is something also I referred to in the information I sent out to people. So I've owned a business since I was 20, I want to say 21. I graduated from UCLA at 20, and I started a business right out of college.
So last year.
You're so sweet. So the thing was, one of the things that you'd mentioned to me is, because I described this whole thing, and you said, that's, so how did you fund your first business, Nancy? And I go, well, we put money on credit cards, and and it's like you said, yeah, and that's how most people start their first startup, is they put a whole bunch of money on credit cards, and then they run into this problem. And it was funny because at that exact time period, my husband, I started a business right out of school. My husband also started a business right shortly thereafter. And then what was interesting is we had ended up with like a huge quantity of consumer debt. And then 2008 happened. And it was just like me and almost every entrepreneur in the world kind of had a huge problem, because the credit card companies all sort of went crazy. They started charging 40% interest. It just was nightmarish, this whole just nightmare situation. And you said, well, yeah, that's what happens to everybody, because most entrepreneurs do start their companies using their own consumer credit. And that has a couple of different really unfortunate outcomes, shall we call them. And do you want to sort of review what happens to people who continue to run their company on their personal credit cards as opposed to moving over to business credit or corporate credit?
Absolutely. Great lead up there. Okay. So there's a lot of dangers when you're doing the personal credit card thing you were just describing. You're subject to the economy, you're subject to the credit cards being closed or called in, or the balance, or the limits being spontaneously dropped on you. So, the economy turns, your business is going great, but the economy turns, and all of a sudden your $20,000 credit card is a $1,000 credit card, but you didn't do anything wrong, but it happened to you. So it's not a long-term solution. But
well, I think the other thing you mentioned to me was the fact that when we were trying to actually buy a house, when we were trying to buy a car, buy anything, the fact, we were paying our credit cards, but it didn't really matter, because they would just see the balances, or they would see the balances fluctuate, because we were doing, if we had to buy a new computer that week, we'd put $2,000 or $3,000 on a credit card. Or if we had to go on a company business trip, we would put $2,000 or $3,000 on that thing. And you know what? They did not like that. It was like,
sure,
we were being graded on a whole different curve.
Right.
Because of the variation and the balance changes.
We can craft a lot of solutions, but without someone understanding the problem, there's no point in coming up with a solution if you don't know what the problem is.
Right. So, can you talk a little bit about how credit card companies see the way entrepreneurs, how they perceive entrepreneurs using their credit cards to start their business?
Sure. Credit cards are not a terrible way to start a business, but there are plenty of pitfalls. And the way I look at it, it's something that kind of only should be done once, because you want to transition to the next, and the next, and the next. You don't want, I know companies that are 8 and 10 years old who are still operating a business on the owner's personal credit cards. It happens every day. It's not uncommon. And eventually they end up with terrible credit. It's just going to happen. Even if the credit cards are maxed out and they never missed a payment, it looks like terrible credit to the lenders. So did they get a lot of money from those credit cards? Did they start a business? Yes. But that can't be the end solution. That's just a dead end. You got to move to the next, the next, the next.
Especially if you want to buy
Um,
a house, you want to be able to buy a car and not pay top dollar, all of those kinds of things.
sure. But I mean, you mentioned a computer. Well,
Mhm.
if I helped your small business with um, business loans that were not personally guaranteed,
Mhm.
they were also only on your business, not on your person, then if you needed $20,000 worth of computers, it wouldn't show up on your personal credit at all, period.
Mhm. And it
So,
shouldn't, because it's a business expense. You have a corporation, it
but,
shouldn't be on your business. It shouldn't be on your personal.
but there's already 50 people on this call. And
Mhm.
if half of them have done the credit card thing, chances are none of them have done one of these next steps that we're talking about,
Right.
such as non-personally guaranteed personal credit. Another solution
Mhm.
that might sound like the same thing, but it's really not, is something called a personal loan. Do you know that term?
Well, I know that a personal loan, I've I've always assumed that it was a um, I've always assumed it was like from a family member or something like that.
No, 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 no. Okay. No, no, we're talking about one of the startup business techniques that we
Mhm.
sometimes combine or do instead of the credit cards or with the credit cards. We do personal credit cards, business credit cards, and personal loans as the startup level, because those three things could be done on the first day that you start your company.
Mhm.
But personal loans are a little different, and if I could explain them, you'll understand why you're at less risk with the credit card companies.
Mhm.
If you do a personal loan, it shows up on your credit just like a personal credit card would, but a personal loan is not rated the same way. It's basically looked at as a car loan,
Mhm.
and it works and looks just like a car loan. So instead of going to a dealer and getting a $25,000 car and then paying every month for 60 months, you have us get you a $25,000 personal loan, and you still make the payments every month, but they give you a check. So you've got the money. So if the economy gets topsy-turvy, they can't lower your limit. You've got the money. It's your money. It's in your bank account. There's no calling it back, you
Mhm.
know? And also, it doesn't hurt your credit the way a maxed out credit card would. A maxed out credit card drops your score more than almost anything else you could do, except for a charge off or a bankruptcy.
Mhm.
Um, a personal loan or two or three or four, if you have four car loans, nobody cares. You go to a bank, they look at your credit, you have four car loans, you're paying them perfectly, they love you. They don't have no problem with that. So if it's four personal loans and they're 25,000 each, that's $100,000, and it was deposited into your bank account as cash.